Days after King Charles sat down with Meghan and Harry on the promise of total silence, a brand new Meghan story hit newsstands, and questions are exploding because of it. One buried sentence quietly rewrites who's really to blame for the chaos of that royal meeting.
Breaking today, Meghan Markle breaks her agreement with King Charles and Buckingham Palace to leak to her friends at People magazine less than a week after that promised meeting.
One tiny wording difference between two major outlets exposes exactly who was whispering to the press. And by the end of this video, you'll see exactly how a magazine cover, a red carpet, and a quiet money problem all connect to the same 6-day betrayal. The about face that wasn't. Here's the full timeline. King Charles was reportedly given a single condition attached to this reunion. No briefings, no leaking, no shaping of the story in either direction. 6 days later, a People magazine cover hit newsstands, and inside it was a claim that doesn't survive contact with the facts. The headline promised a heartwarming resolution. Harry's long-awaited reunion with his father, Meghan, and the children supposedly at his side throughout. But dig into the actual text, and the story shifts. Meghan, the piece claims, had planned to join her husband for several outings during the visit, until a sudden about-face occurred, with security concerns preventing her and the children from a full visit. Except nothing changed. The security arrangement they flew in under was the same one already agreed to weeks earlier, the same one both sides were said to be comfortable working within. Nobody upgraded anything. Nobody withdrew anything. There was no reversal to explain, because there was no new development to trigger one. What actually happened is simpler and far less dramatic. A woman largely absent from a long-awaited family reunion needed an explanation for that absence, and a magazine manufactured one that sounded better than the truth. That's worth sitting with for a second, because it's the first crack in a story that was supposed to be about healing a family. A magazine doesn't reach for an invented reversal unless the real explanation is one it would rather not print. And this is not the only crack in the story. If you're noticing how quickly this story falls apart under basic scrutiny, that's exactly the pattern we're tracking here. So make sure you're subscribed, because these royal stories keep shifting by the week, and you don't want to miss the next contradiction before it gets buried. The sentence that protects her. Now, here's the detail that turns a soft magazine profile into something closer to a defense brief. Buried in the same cover story is this line: "When it comes to Harry's dealings with his family, she always lets him lead." Read that again slowly. That isn't a magazine describing a marriage. That's a single sentence engineered to remove one person entirely from responsibility for a week she's said to have helped plan. If the announcements, the reversals, and the public back and forth over this visit caused embarrassment, that line exists, so none of it sticks to her. And the sourcing pattern backs this up. The piece leans on a source who knows the couple, another insider, and a source who knows them well, all pointing the same direction, all softening the same narrative. Add in the well-documented history here. Harry has personally emailed this outlet before, not through a spokesperson, and this magazine has functioned for years as something close to a house journal for the Sussexes, a place where messages get placed without visible fingerprints. When a story reads like this, there isn't really a mystery about its origin. There's no fourth option. It's them, their circle, or their team. The single thing the palace is said to have asked for was silence. Not statements, not spin. Just quiet, uncontested, unmanaged quiet. That request lasted less than a week, and it wasn't broken by accident. 2 papers, 1 afternoon. But this cover story doesn't stop at protecting one image. It also quietly reshapes another relationship, the one between the brothers. Tucked into the piece is language that nudges attention toward William, framing him as the immovable one in this rift. And this wasn't isolated. On the very same day this People cover landed, the New York Times ran its own piece covering the same ground. Still no contact between Harry and William. Still no movement. Still a broken relationship. 2 American outlets, both with a long track record of favorable Sussex coverage, running near identical framing within hours of each other. That alone doesn't prove coordination. But it's a coincidence worth noticing. Here's the detail that actually exposes it, though. And it's easy to miss if you're skimming. Look at the attribution lines in both pieces. Harry's team is quoted as having declined to comment. Kensington Palace, by contrast, did not respond to requests for comment. Those two phrases sound similar. They are not the same sentence, and anyone who has worked near a newsroom knows the difference immediately. Did not respond means silence. Nobody picked up. No email was answered. There was no conversation to decline. Decline to comment means the opposite. Contact happened, a conversation took place, and someone chose, deliberately, not to be quoted in it. One brother's side answered the phone. The other brother's side never got the call in the first place. So, on the same afternoon, two publications ran parallel stories reassigning blame for a family rift, sourced through a channel that had clearly engaged with at least one side, while the other side wasn't even given the chance to respond. That's not neutral reporting. That's a controlled narrative wearing the costume of journalism, dressed up with enough sourcing language to look independent while doing exactly the opposite. The red carpet problem. While that cover story was going to print, Harry was 3,000 miles away, working a red carpet solo in New York. Cameras everywhere, flashbulbs firing constantly, non-stop, in his face. And this is the same man whose ongoing legal campaign against UK tabloids rests substantially on the argument that press intrusion and camera flashes cause him genuine, lasting harm. The emotional foundation of a years-long crusade against the British press. Yet, there he was, calling out to individual photographers by name, telling them he loved it, working the line like a seasoned performer, not a man enduring trauma. Asked whether he was disappointed about a sporting result, he tossed off a quick answer and kept walking. A brief, breezy moment from someone who has, at other times, criticized the very fan culture he was casually engaging with. He wasn't merely tolerating that moment, he was clearly enjoying it, visibly, and without any hesitation whatsoever. There was no flinching at the flashes, no shielding his face, no visible discomfort of any kind. Just a man working a room he clearly knew how to work. Which raises an obvious, unavoidable question. If cameras aren't actually the problem, and travel isn't actually the problem, because he flew in, flew out, moved with his children with zero incident, then what exactly is the security fight really about? The honest answer has very little to do with safety, and everything to do with leverage. Consider the facts. His official protection ended when he stepped back from royal duties in 2020, and the review into reinstating it remains open. Multiple people familiar with how these assessments work have indicated there's no specific credible threat driving this. If there were, the protection level would already reflect it. Nothing is being withheld out of spite. There's simply nothing new in the current picture to justify an upgrade. And the geography doesn't help his case. He skipped a domestic charity event citing security concerns, yet this is a man who has traveled to Colombia, to Nigeria, and to an active war zone without incident or complaint. Is a UK charity appearance genuinely riskier than a conflict zone? That's not a security position. That's a negotiating position, built on leverage rather than risk. Follow the money. Here's where it gets financially uncomfortable, because British state protection, once granted, historically travels with a person wherever they go. It doesn't stop at the border. Former prime ministers keep coverage for international travel indefinitely. If Harry's protection were ever reinstated, the multi-million-dollar-a-year private security bill he currently covers in California wouldn't shrink. It would transfer, quietly, onto the British taxpayers' ledger, covering every appearance, every holiday, every engagement for decades. He's in his 40s. His children are small. Run that commitment across 3 or 4 decades, and the number becomes genuinely enormous. He was warned about exactly this before he stepped back, according to accounts of the conversation. Security was described as the one thing that would follow him out the door, and leaving would very likely mean losing it. At the time, that warning apparently didn't land. The assumption by most accounts was that a global media deal would cover the gap indefinitely. That assumption hasn't aged well. His recent legal case against a UK tabloid publisher ended in a comprehensive loss, and in the British system, costs typically follow the result, meaning the losing side often covers a substantial share of the winning side's legal fees. The figures under discussion run into the tens of millions. Layer onto that a shortfall said to run around £25 million in Invictus Games funding, a security bill with nowhere to go, and a media deal that's largely wound down, and the financial pressure looks like it's closing in from every direction at once. None of these problems are hypothetical either. They're active, ongoing obligations with real deadlines attached, the kind that don't wait for a family relationship to sort itself out first. Which brings us to the Elton John story, making the rounds this week. Harry is said to have approached him for help, covering both the legal costs and the Invictus shortfall, reasoning that Elton bore some responsibility since he'd originally introduced Harry to the barrister involved in the case. According to multiple accounts, Elton declined, and Harry was reportedly hurt by the refusal. Worth remembering, Elton was a co-claimant in that same lawsuit, with his own finances and no obligation whatsoever to underwrite someone else's legal outcome. Meanwhile, the King's position has apparently been made plain. He isn't covering Harry's legal bills. There's precedent for support. Charles is understood to have funded a full year of private security after the couple stepped back. But that well isn't bottomless, and the message this time appears to have landed clearly. Add it all up, and the picture is one of mounting pressure with very few remaining levers to pull, which loops back to the timing of this entire reunion. Charles is a king in his 70s, living with a cancer diagnosis. Whatever informal arrangements currently exist for Harry rest in his father's hands, and only for as long as his father remains in a position to make them. That single fact reframes everything, turning what's being sold as a story about healing into something that looks a great deal more like a closing window. Now, put all 5 threads on the table at once. A silence agreement that lasted 6 days. A cover story engineered to lift blame off one person and quietly redirect it toward a sibling relationship instead. A red carpet appearance that undercuts the emotional core of an active legal campaign. A financial picture tightening from every angle. And a request for help that reportedly ended in a flat refusal and hurt feelings. Any single one of these could be dismissed on its own as a rough week, an unfortunate coincidence, a news cycle that simply got away from everyone involved. Stacked together, one on top of another, in the exact same 7-day window, they stop looking like coincidence and start looking like coordination. And that's precisely why questions are growing after this latest People magazine story. Because the one thing the palace is said to have asked for was silence, and within days, 2 major American outlets ran stories that happened to protect one image, soften a second, and shift attention toward a family rift that conveniently kept the spotlight off the choices made that week. The palace, notably, has said nothing through any of it. No statements, no counter-briefings, no rebuttals, no leaks of its own to compete with. Just the exact silence that was requested, delivered, it seems, by only one side of this story. That silence is easy to overlook precisely because it's silence. But in a story built entirely on who talked and who didn't, it might be the most telling detail of all. So, the real question was never whether any single piece of this was a coincidence on its own. It's how many more of these so-called coincidences will need to stack up, one after another, before the pattern becomes impossible to explain away as anything other than exactly what it looks like. If you want to keep following this story as it develops in real time, subscribe now. Because based on how quickly this narrative has already shifted once in a single week, it almost certainly won't be the last contradiction we catch before it's over.